Hello everybody and welcome back. I don't know about you, but when EU4 adds a new feature, there's always a ton of things they don't do that they then eventually do in about 3 years that make the feature better. So, being the kind-hearted citizen that I am, I've made a flowchart. A flowchart which explains how to add features to EU4. And I thought I would show it to you because I thought you might find it fun. It also contains, as a kind of side note, a ton of suggestions of things that they ought to have done already that hopefully they will do in the future. And they probably will do in the future. It's just that it takes a while for quality of life things to filter through into updates. So step 1, design a great new feature. This is mostly for EU4, but it also kind of applies to some other Paradox grand strategies. Design a great new feature. They're already good at this. This is no problem. Did you update the UI to tell the player about the feature and its effects? If yes, that's good. Go to the next step. If no, do that. For example, there's tons of examples of this, but right now, the minus 100 opinion penalty you get for being a hegemony in EU4 is not telegraphed anywhere. It's not explained. It's not, before you do it, it doesn't tell you that this will happen, which means that you do this, and then quite frequently, tons of your personal unions, for example, will go disloyal. Your vassals will go disloyal. You'll lose the next HRE election, and your allies will abandon you, all of a sudden that the AI didn't tell you, the game didn't tell you it was going to happen. So that's great. So do that, fix that. Cool. Next step. If applicable, did you add the ability for the player to do the new thing via the macro builder? If yes, good stuff. If no, do that. For example, adding provinces to trade companies would be good. There aren't that many examples of this right now, which is good because this is one of the things that they've been doing slowly over the years. The macro builder is now pretty good. I remember the days when you could do almost nothing in the macro builder, hence why this is in here. These are examples that are either current or some of them where it just wasn't done for years after the feature launch, to be borne in mind for future features. Did you add the information the player needs to make the decision to the macro builder? No. In tons of cases, no. For example, when looking at applying a state edict, there is almost no information in the macro builder. There is what the edict will do in terms of like plus 25% manpower, but it doesn't tell you any information about the state, like for example, how much manpower there is in the state. See also building courthouses, state houses, and ramparts, where the macro builder gives you precisely no information, despite there being very clear things that are useful to know. For example, with courthouses, current province governing cost, or current province development, or is it in a state or not? State houses, what is the price of the good being produced in that province is what you usually want to know for state houses, as well as what is the current state governing cost, is it in a state or not, all kinds of useful information that you don't have, which makes the macro builder for building these things much less useful. Building ramparts. Ramparts are essentially only useful in provinces with forts, and the macro builder does not tell you if the province that you're trying to select has a fort or not. Did you teach the AI to use the new feature? Mostly yes, of course, in which case carry on, but often no. So remember the 4 years that the AI didn't know how to sell provinces? I remember. They taught them recently and it was quite exciting. The AI also, as far as I know, does not know how to sell ships, take international loans. Many of the covert actions the AI will never do. Use Scorch Earth, the AI will never do this. And there are tons of others that they didn't know how to do for ages, some of which they are getting better at. I think bestowing Imperial Grace might be another example of that. Did you check if the new numerical displays overflow when the player pushes the values to the limit? They will always do this. So if not, obviously, do that. Improve relations at 100% currently overflows. The plus on the 100% will overflow with the box, which is a pretty hopelessly low rate because over 100% improved relations is almost guaranteed to happen in any successful campaign. But there you go. Force limits over 1,000 overflow. Overextension above 1,000% also overflows. Christo, no one ever gets 1,000 overextension. Ho ho. Do I have some series on my channel you should go and watch? Yes, they do. The name of almost every trade company in the subject tab dramatically overflows the box that they've allotted for it to go. Did you add a list that can have 10 plus things in it with only room to show 2 to 3 things at once? If yes, don't do that. HRE incidents, you can have a ton of different HRE incidents. I think there's 9 or so. It can only show 2 in the window. That's madness. Give it a bigger window. Estate privileges, you can have, I think there might be a maximum potential number in the list of 16. That's with all of the different monopolies on goods for the nobles, who I think have the most privileges. And you can see 3 at once for no reason. Just make the box bigger. It's very easy. Did you add a new hotkey to do the new thing? If not, do that. Allowing units to attach to things, attacking natives, scorching earth, burning colonies, seizing colonies, refilling garrison, building supply depots, disbanding a unit, exploiting development, macro builder tab, opening the HRE window, opening the papacy window, opening the Empire of China window, etc., 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 etc. All of these don't have shortcut keys. Disband unit, you might be able to hit delete. That one might be wrong. Did you consider if the new feature allows a non-capped cost to reach 0%? So if you're not familiar with a non-capped cost, things like coring, there is a minimum cost to core development. I believe it's 1 admin point per development. That didn't used to be the case, and it wasn't the case for many years. And also absolutism is currently capped, having its effects limited to 100. It didn't used to be the case. You could get 145 if you had been both Prussia and France in a symbol campaign, which you could do at the time. So it was fun but broken. Make sure your new feature does not allow a cost to reach 0%, because 0% is a lot less than 5%, even if it doesn't seem like it. Did you design the UI to fit on screens smaller than 720p, hence sacrificing the function on 720p and up screens? It basically applies to every UI screen in the game. I'm not saying this from a position of knowledge, though. It's worth noting. The reason why Paradox's UIs are very frequently so cramped and small, I have to assume it's because they're trying to support small screens. I don't know that for certain, so just to be clear. But the HRE screen, for example, the HRE screen is currently usable on a 480p monitor, and you can fit a larger one on a 720p monitor. That's madness. Almost everyone has a 1080p monitor, and literally pretty much everyone has a 720 monitor. There's no reason for this screen to be so small, or any of the other screens to be so small. Even with mods to make screens larger, the HRE one is notoriously difficult to mod. So make the screens larger. No one is using 480p monitors. It's ridiculous. Did you remove useful information from the player when updating the UI? And this could be expanded upon. Did you examine the existing UI when designing the new one? And this is something that, and if you did do that, don't do that. This is something that was very clear wasn't done when was designing the new HRE window. The new HRE window no longer tells us how electors vote on reforms. You can see how electors vote on the next emperor, but you cannot see how they vote on reforms, which is particularly annoying because Brandenburg and Bohemia are the two that will most likely vote against the revoke the privileges reform, at which point they leave the HRE. So the only way really to know how they vote right now is to pass the reform, and then if they leave, you just lost them. And if you're playing Iron Man without saves coming, it just sucks to be you. You just lost hundreds and hundreds of development. There also used to be a list of all the princes and how they voted when you hovered over each reform. This was removed in 1.3. The only way I can understand this is that whoever designed the HRE window for 1.30 didn't look at the previous one and say, okay, here are all the useful bits of information we need to retain, and made a list and then retained them, which is frustrating because it was a reform called Emperor, and it made the HRE Emperor screen dramatically worse. Did you add a drop-down alert to tell a player they can use the new feature? If not, do that. You can become a hegemony. I spent about 60 years being able to become a hegemony in my last game until I remembered, oh yeah, someone on Discord was like, have you become a hegemony yet? I was like, no, I didn't. Make a drop down to tell you that you can do your new feature. You can seize a state land, you can take on a state agenda, and you are losing the HRE election. Just some other examples of pop-ups that could drop down and be helpful. Oh, but Christo, not everyone wants to see those pop-ups. Well, good news. You can disable pop-ups, so that's no problem. Nice job. By following all these steps, you'll reduce the number of future quality of life updates in future years by about 50%. It's obviously just a guess. But a lot of these are things that Paradox does do. It's just that they typically do them for features they released 2 years ago and then continue to not do them for existing features, which, to say the least, is odd. Just so there's a slight bit of gameplay in this video. Check this out. This is my current off-camera campaign. Having a good time as Italy. We can give you some examples of some of the things overflowing and a couple of other problems that I've just talked about. Why is the plus intersecting with the box? Tons of people are going to get improved relations up to 100%. I've got it up to 215% in this playthrough. Come on. But yeah, we're very absolute. We're coring lots of land, very cheap. It's annoying that absolutism administrative efficiency is only useful for coring speed above 45%, because once you get it to 45% plus the negative 50% from being in a territory, the multiplicative modifier is already below the minimum that it actually has an effect on coring cost, which is 90%. But oh well. Should be a fairly easy one tag in this game. As you can see, I have a personal union over France, I have a personal union over Poland, I had a personal union over Austria and Aragon and Portugal. I had a nice big fat fed Byzantine subject over here, which was good stuff. Yeah, I was Castile to start with, of course, and I just conquered England early and then formed Italy Trade income is going up. It was 250 ducats in 1620. So in the last 47 years, I've managed to increase it by about 200%. That number should keep going up as I flesh out all my beautiful little local ventures and increase the amount of goods produced that we have downstream. And obviously, as we move into India, things will keep getting easier and easier. Anyway, that's my video on how to make EU4 features good the first time, rather than having to do a bunch of quality of life patches. It would save so much time if you just did it all first time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.